Buckle up for AEC Trailblazers, the Founders Files, where we crack open the stories of the brightest minds in the AEC startup scene. Forget institutional pitches. We're diving deep into the real personal journeys of these industry disruptors. Get ready for some casual chats firsthand.
Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of the AC Trailblazers podcast, where we interview the most amazing founders of the AC. Today with us, we have Dimitri Stefanescu. He's the CEO and founder at Speckle. He previously worked at Arup, was a Marie Curie Fellow at UCL, where he started Speckle as an open source project. Architect at Bogdan and Van Broek. I hope I pronounced that right. He's alumni of the TU Delft Faculty of Architecture. He has a PhD in design, digital design communication from UCL, the Bartlett. His analytical passion lies in the intersection of communication and data, exploring how the AC industry can be served by more accessible workflows and tools. Meanwhile, in his day and night job, he figures out how to build an amazing company, occasionally internally addressed as a design intern. If we can start you clarifying that, Dimitri, that would be great.
Yes, I can clarify that. I think, wow, yes, I don't think I added that in my bio, but I think I know who did. No, it's fun. Why graphic design intern? It's because I always loved doing graphics. So you've mentioned in my background, like I am trained as an architect. And before that in high school, amongst other things, I was also doing like posters for theater plays and all sorts of interacting presentations with Flash action script, if any of you remember those days. And kind of a bit of that passion, let's say, still lingers in me and in my nickname.
Interesting. I bet you're kind of those CEOs that like still, it's like Steve Jobs, right? That still like to make opinions about that little button or that little thing or anything related with DUI in general, right?
Yes, I think yes, to a certain extent, yes. I think a lot of Speckle employees will agree with you, and I will not deny that. Let's put it like this. Yeah, I do have a passion for maybe you could call it craft and you could call it attention to detail. Not that I get things right always, but I do tend to like get into like, if you're coding up a website or something like this, the CSS rules and colors. I like having a high quality output there. And sometimes I enjoy helping others do that. And I think that's what earned me my nickname as Chief Graphic Designer. Yes, hopefully soon to be replaced by AI, that side of my job. So
AI is going to replace most of our jobs, or at least partially, right? A big portion of what we do.
Indeed.
But it's interesting that you have a passion for design, and you're an architect, right? An architectural background, and most people, when you hear that, you immediately think, "Oh, this guy." Would ideally be one of those architects who likes to design these amazing, cool, beautiful buildings. How the hell you ended up working in technology when your passion is design so much?
Well, my parents might listen to this, so like I'm gonna try and keep it civil. But in a high school, like my passion actually lied in coding. I was lucky enough to get into, this is in Bucharest in Romania. I was lucky enough to be in this intensive informatics class. So we were doing like 8 hours of C++ a week. So quite heavy duty programming. And then I also enjoyed a lot the creative side of things, as I mentioned earlier. So like interactive projections for theater plays, posters, like generative design, the early days of. And then I went to my parents and I said, I want to do new media for my university courses, right? I don't want to do, something very creative. And my dad, being an architect, like came in and said like, hey, look, this is Romania. You won't make much money. by actually, doing new media, whatever new media meant at the time. Why don't you try architecture? It's a kind of like perfect combination of like technical and creative skills. And that's how I ended up studying architecture and getting essentially like my master's degree from Delft several years later. But my passion always lied with coding. So from uni, like I always kind of like jumped into doing RhinoScript workshops. Then later on, Grasshopper came out, so parametric design, custom components for Grasshopper, all that stuff. So that's kind of like my story and my way into the industry. I do love craft, so I think this is one thing that I share a lot with architects. I do love essentially like making that building perfect, getting that floor plan layout, as amazing as you can get it, like with the best spatial qualities you can afford to put in there. Materials as well, like that attention. So I always maybe had that a bit of OCD, you might call it, when it comes to design. I don't know, you name it. So I enjoy essentially a lot sitting at the intersection of these two things.
That's also interesting because it's like it's like when I ask software developers that if what they're doing it's creative, right? And they typically are like, no, if it's a front end, they might say yes. But if it's a back end, they might say, no, I just create the back end. And I think no matter what you do when you're coding, it's creative anyway, right? Because like if you need to think a way on how you're gonna solve it. And even if you're I hate the vibe coding thing, but if you're doing vibe coding, it's still creative because you have to think in a way on how you're gonna make it work. So I think it's such a creative process anyway. It's not that because you're just doing that. It's not that you're not being creative.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I think it goes back to maybe this comes with more of like my, experience on now. It's like there's different types of people in the world. Some people like everything is creative for them, like regardless of what they're doing, it is a creative job, right? Whether it's coding, whether it's backend, whether it's front end, whether it's organizing your Grasshopper script or your Dynamo script, right? Or even, crafting the perfect Revit template for for your company, right? That still is essentially a job where you need, like, if you do it right, you go in full focus and you get the best thing done possibly, right? And there are obviously people who, take it just as a job, and there are obviously as well, like, I do not want to say this, like, God knows I've spent endless nights rendering things, thinking, asking deep questions about my life. Why am I doing this to myself, right? So, yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great definition of work in general. That, like, if you're not putting any creativity into it, maybe you're not doing the best work you can. I think that could be a good way of saying it. Like, you can opt off not using creativity at all, but good chances are that you're not using your full potential, I guess.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. It's a nice definition, as you called it.
But then changing gears a little bit, because you were mentioning Grasshopper and Dynamo and something that we were discussing before we started recording is I think there's for me at least, right? I consider myself a crappy developer, and for me when somebody tells me like I'm a software developer and I do scripting and only do scripting, for me it's like, yeah, I mean, you do scripting, you're not doing software development. When you have to take the jump from doing scripts into actually creating a tool that is not only for internal use, but for everybody to use and might be used many external users, I feel there's a big gap there. And I'm just curious, how was for you that gap? Was a big gap, or it was like, nah, it was pretty much the same thing as just doing.
Oh man, Valentin, yeah, I had no idea what I'm getting into, to be bluntly honest. Right. So there is that big gap. I kind of felt it a bit where I was working in practice. Like I was, like, okay, you build, let's say, one Grasshopper script to do X, or like whatever I built, whatever random interactive application for an iPad for like stakeholders to negotiate aspects of a master plan. And then, like getting those things quote unquote production ready, always was a increasing challenge of, hidden complexity in a sense. And, with my, let's say, current day job, like at Speckle, right, with what we do now there, that was a similar journey where you just learn and adapt. Like when I started off, Speckle was literally just a collection. Like it was a very funny Grasshopper plugin, right? That did one thing, quite cool. It was also like it had a server-side component and a 3JS viewer, so you could view those models online. Then it kept evolving. The number of people using it increased. Then also like what they were using things on, also like kind of from like haha hobby projects. Like suddenly, if things went bad, we're like, dude, you're holding up my my deadline. This is not cool. So there was always that technical challenge of essentially like getting your script or your idea and turning it into a product. That is always, let's say, it's an ongoing discovery. Even now at Speckle, like we're putting out cool new things, that are like little POCs, or we call them, I don't know, tactical prototypes in a sense. And taking those tactical prototypes and making them production ready is always a big challenge. But I think the biggest challenge here that goes unsaid most of the time is not a technical one necessarily, but it's more around product work and how the product operates. And basically, there's a shift from when you have your custom script, right, that does your thing really well, like you've built it for that project and it works wonderfully, it saves endless hours of time. And then you're thinking, whether inside the company or whatever, like, okay, I'm going to take this script and make it generally applicable for more projects. That act of generalization always, if not careful, erodes the value of your original script, right? Because suddenly from something that's very tailored to a very specific process, like you suddenly end up with something generic that may not make people happy. And then like, then you need to work backwards from there and then start pushing people into like, hey, this is how you use my quote unquote original script. So there's that back and forth between essentially highly specific tools or like processes or scripts versus the generalization that needs to come with a product that needs to be essentially workable for, thousands, tens of thousands of users. And that has been and is at Speckle an ongoing act of discovery and learning, right?
Yeah, and I think it's the toughest thing to do when you lead a startup, because it's listening to your clients and understanding what they want, and that filtering process, it's so hard because it maybe what they're saying, it's first of all the client is not always right, because sometimes they're requesting something they might need, but they might be communicating in a way in the wrong way, right? Or it might be a really specific isolated problem on a specific company, and you cannot derail for just one of your clients, change the whole product just for one of your clients. So I think it's extremely tough and a painful process. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yes, it is. And especially, I mean, this was that effect that you just described was compounded because Speckle, when I started it, was like an open source project. It was UCL. I was a researcher, lovely times, whatever. So everything open source, and also that came with a set of expectations afterwards. Like open source, there's always a kind of there's a big mismatched set of expectations when people look at a project that's open source, where there's a lot of demands and there's a lot of like kind of projections, and can you make it do this? Can you make it do that? Can you add that feature? And a lot of that, let's say, demand is not kind of matched with contributions back. So you end up as a solo developer, like, oh my God, what am I doing here and why, right? So yes, the client is definitely not always right, especially when they're not paying you. Let's put it like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Open source, I think that, Chris Dickinson, he works with us. And the
Yes.
other day we were discussing about, there is a misconception, I feel, with open source, that people thinks that open source means uh, free, in the sense,
Mhm.
not in the sense that they will not have to pay, but in the sense that, oh, nobody's maintaining this. It just rains. It comes from the clouds and the sky, and it appears there, and there is no
No,
effort behind it. I can just ask whatever I want because it's open source.
no,
And in the end, it's like, yeah, it's open source and you're getting it free, but in the end, there is someone behind putting a lot of effort into it, and sometimes people, they don't realize that, and I think it's a misconception, and that's why you end up getting much more many requests from
Mhm.
people, features, than actually people doing sending a PR or adding a feature to your tool. I
Correct.
don't know.
Yeah, correct. There's also like I think this is also down a bit to the skills that are present in the industry, and I feel like over the years, I think the maturity has grown, so there are more people capable of contributing. But overall, I agree with your assessment. Like there is that misconception, and I think Matteo, my co-founder, actually wrote an article around this, trying to explain this from Speckle's point of view, like where we stand, because we were obviously at the butt end at a lot of this. Um, and then we tried to make a clear stance where, like, okay, hey, exactly what you said, Speckle's open source. That doesn't mean it's free. That means you can keep us accountable. And there's a bit of a difference there between essentially like free services, free software, blah, 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 and actually keeping us accountable in, let's say, the AC ecosystem around data providers. So,
Yeah. No, well, first of all, I think Speckle might be maybe the most used or the biggest or open source tool of the AC, right? If it is not the most, it's in, let's say it's in the top 10, for to not
yes,
disrespect.
but we've never looked at this, but yeah, cautiously, I would agree with your estimation. I think there's other very cool projects like Bonsai Beam, formerly known as Blender Beam,
Blender,
which,
yeah.
yes, exactly. Then the IFCJS crew are doing that open company again. They're doing an amazing work there for viewing IFC files in the browser. So it's encouraging to see, actually, like from back in 2020 when pretty much none of this existed. There were very few bits and parts here and there, but very isolated. Now, like, I think the fact that even you can say a top 10 list of open source projects in AC is like, oh wow, there's more. That means there's more than 10, which is like super cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and like you said, there are other people doing amazing tools. Yours, I feel the difference is that a lot of end users are using it. That open company is also amazing because it means that there are enough developers to actually use a framework like that open company to start building their own tools. Uh,
Mhm.
but Speckle, that's what I like, that end users can be part of it. And I'm just curious because at the beginning it's easy to say I'm gonna be open source when you're just your own, or you and Matteo, or like, it's just easy, right? Because it's your own decision. You don't have to worry about investors. You don't have to worry about anything like that. But how do you deal with that when you start getting a lot of users, and suddenly you get investors, and suddenly you need to get revenue? Um, it gets harder. It gets easier.
I would say, I would say for us, being open source worked out really well. That original decision, yes, as you said, it was easy, and pretty much I took it more from a like kind of a moral standpoint that my research is funded by public money. You pay taxes for it, so then I feel that you should also have reaped the bounty of that. And as we progressed and when we established the company, that was actually a bit of a difficult moment because at that time, a bunch like open source was not that pervasive as a backing of a business model. So it took us a while to essentially like find a partner that believed in us. And we also transformed it into like a key kind of commercial argument. Basically what I said earlier, like you can keep us accountable. The fact that essentially when we go out and we sell to our clients, we say like, hey, this is how much we charge, right? This is our pricing. Okay, you want an enterprise deal, that's going to cost you this much, blah, blah, blah. We inevitably in these conversations get back like, oh, so how are you guys different than Autodesk? Well, like a predatory monster, and I hate them for, EBA renewals, blah, 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 all the, I'm sure your audience is familiar with the sentiment there. And that's the moment where we can say like, hey, look, actually, we're open source. So like if we ever piss you off and if we ever become that annoying monster that you've mentioned, you can just self-host Speckle and you're free of us and any kind of like commercial understanding between us, and your data is safe and it's portable, etc. And that has the effect of winning like both hearts and minds. So in a sense, for what AEC needed and for what AEC needs, for us, it's a very good argument. And it's actually doing us a lot of favors from that point of view by sticking to our principles. So, and when it comes to revenue, maybe it makes things a bit more difficult, but I wouldn't say so. Actually, this is also coming from the fact that actually economically it is cheaper to pay us to host Speckle for you than it is to get a Kubernetes engineer and a DevOps person inside your company to keep and maintain a production Speckle server alive. So, some people have the capacity to do this internally, and then we're very happy for them. And then we still help them out, and there's no problem. But the vast majority of firms inside architecture, engineering, and construction don't have that capacity. So that's when essentially a very standard SaaS business model comes into play.
No, absolutely. And I think you brought a really good point that if you want to do it, you can do it. I think that even let's say that you have a deal with Amazon that you pay zero of a server, and let's say, I don't know why, but you have a free DevOps engineer who can deploy this into an EC2 or something. But even then, like every time there is a bug, because there are always going to be bugs, or you need a specific connection, or you will have to code that. And for that, you have to understand the whole code. That takes a lot of, not only a lot of effort, but it takes a lot of time that in most cases you don't have. So I think in general, that's what I think that people it's pissed off with among the many reasons with Autodesk is I'm paying such a big amount of money, and products barely change from year to year. So and they have a lot of bugs, and it's like charging me a lot of money for something that I don't see the the benefit. I think that's the problem. It's not that they're charging them, but
that they're not getting what they expect in return. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think innovation inside the EC, especially if you look at, let's say, other verticals, has kind of stagnated especially from the draftsman data modeling point of view. Like you don't really have, where we're at now in 2025. Like when I started off in my, let's say, professional career, like I would have not expected to be pretty much in the same place we were 20 years ago, right? With kind of like minor incremental improvements along the way. And I think that's the root of the frustration. And I agree with you there 100%. And yeah, here, I mean, we're maintaining an active base. It's, we're trying to essentially like inject some of that innovation and that thirst for innovation, and also to a certain extent be the basis for that innovation, because I think that's another kind of frustration point that we've identified. People don't like to build stuff on top of closed systems, right? Because then you are pretty much beholden to that closed system. So when you develop a Revit plugin, that plugin will only work with Revit pretty much, right? This is where we put forward a more kind of democratic value proposition where you say like, hey, yeah, if you build a plugin that works with Speckle, or like if you build functionality on top of Speckle, that's not guaranteed to work, but it will work with other data sources, not just Revit. It's going to work with Rhino. You can make it to work with ArchiCAD and whatever other data sources we're ingesting. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think also not to, so we don't rant out of this that much. The reality is that well, it's hard, yeah, but Revit, it's an old tool, man. It's a reality. Is like it's great. It's an amazing tool, but it's old, man. It was coded 25 years ago. If you go to any other industry, there is no tool that is still being used for 25 years, like except for, I don't know, Excel. And even Excel has the cloud version. Revit, and that's also the problem, that with desktop tools you have to build on top of them, and it's a pain in the ass. When you have something that it's deployed on the cloud, you can just create your own website and just be connected through a REST API or GraphQL, whatever you like. But the reality, I think that's also a game changer, that 90% of Autodesk tools are desktop, and the reality is that nothing against desktop, but you have to deal to be to create tools within those tools, not something that it's just connected to.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I don't have anything against desktop tools as well, and this is where maybe another, because you can minimize, like you can squeeze out performance from desktop tools much better than you can in a browser necessarily. Let's say for now, at least, that would be, let's say, an acceptable limitation. But when you look at the evolution of tools, I don't think that's a valid excuse for much longer. Let's put it like this, right? And then plus, you can't say Revit is the most performant tool out there, right?
No,
because it runs on desktop, right?
Yeah, and it's desktop, but it's single thread, and there is no excuse for that, because you can use multi-thread on desktop anyway. But yeah, and I also that I feel that's gonna change. And for me, a lot of people are still thinking, what's gonna be the next Revit? And at least personally, I think that's stupid, because it's like thinking having a horse, and it's like, what's gonna be the next horse? Like, it's gonna be a car. It's not gonna be a horse. So it needs to be something completely different, and be better, and I don't know. And that's my thinking, and having many more people with the skills that companies like yours are creating, actually, right? Like you have a company that it's training a lot of people, that it's making a lot of people being excited about collaborating into an open source tool. So I think that's going to change soon, and a lot of new companies are going to appear. They're going to try to solve this gap.
Yes, I hope so. Actually, there's a couple of them that are already building stuff on top of Speckle. So we love to see that, and we love to support them. And I agree with your statement earlier. Like, it's a very clear way of putting it. Like, if Revit is a horse, what's the next horse? It's not the right question to ask. It's more like, how are we designing a car? What's that step change? How it will look like? And I do believe now, like, we're in a phase where we're gonna see more and more of, let's say, Revit's functionality slowly eroded by other various disparate little tools that do things really well, and then maybe at one point that will converge. There are like nice examples of like what Hyper is doing, or Snaptrude, and so on. Arcle, for that matter. They're very good, let's say, canaries to see like how will the scene evolve, will these tools, because there's another question around like the adoption of this next gen technology, so to say, right? I think what we've noticed is, like, we've been sheltered from this effect mostly because we don't touch authoring. We explicitly say, authoring is not our bread and butter. What we do is we take that data out and we help you like kind of put it in value with others and share it with other people. But when it comes to authoring and documentation, like, my experience is that architects, engineers, and so on, and consultants. There are very high expectations around how that software behaves, how that software like works at scale or doesn't. And it's a very tough challenge. It's a very tough cookie, so to say, right?
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I'm glad these companies are there and they're doing a great job. It's just that it's a really hard problem. That's the reality. If you ask, Altaf, Ian, or any
Yeah.
of these guys who are leading these companies, like when you have to deal with parametric geometry and design, it's so complex to code it, and even more if you're doing it in the cloud. It just takes time. Like if you want to create your own kernel from scratch, like Snapchat is doing, like it just takes a lot of time because it's tough.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, not an easy challenge.
No, not at all. And based on that, what you guys because right now I feel Speckle is it's a great tool to be at the center of many tools, right? Like you can go from here to here and you can visualize and storage and manage your projects. And what's coming from you guys? Like you still want to be the best tool that connects everything, or do you think in the future you might also go the route of, hey, you can get the data and then you can, I don't know, adjust your design, or I don't know, create drawings in Speckle? Do you think that in the future you might like to do that, or that's a route that you prefer to stay away?
I think it all goes back to pretty much our mission. And I think here we want to make AC better. And at the core of that, like the Speckle's actually core value proposition is a open, flexible, dynamic, and modern data layer. So every step of our journey so far has been taken from the point of view of like, how do we unlock that data layer for the AC industry? So that's why we developed connectors. That's why essentially like our workflow offering around design coordination. So being able to have, quasi multiplayer design sessions in Rhino or Rhino to Revit, whatever. Those are all geared towards essentially like putting more data in the system and then creating essentially like a viable data layer for the AC ecosystem. So our next steps are usually determined by that. And this is where, for example, why do we have a 3D viewer? It's because, man, like we love spinning things in 3D, right? Right. So
Yeah.
when you can do that in a browser, it's amazing, right? And just by having that 3D viewer, we've unlocked like a whole set of like kind of new communication possibilities and collaboration possibilities. The fact that you can, like with one click, you share that model link with whoever you want, with your client or with your stakeholder. Then we've added comments. Like why did we add comments? It was purely an experiment. But what's happening now is that people are like taking those comments and building essentially facility management applications on top of Speckle, where those comments are being transformed into like I click on this element and I say, okay, this is out of order, I need to fix it, right? So this is kind of our evolution. And it might look like it's a bit more like spread out or chaotic, but actually what we're doing is we're following our nose of how our clients actually want to leverage their data and put it in practice and make use of it. Because that's again something I think we strongly do not like, which is data for data's sake. Whenever there's all these data lakes, data layers, blah blah blah. They create, like, endless gigabytes of Revit files and so on. Yes, we have so much data, but like, okay, what do you do with it? And, I might be, okay, nerding out, but essentially like from communication theories, like there's a very simple saying, like, if that data is not used and it's communicated, it's just noise. So like if I'm going to send you 500 PDFs or like 10 gigabytes of Revit files and IFC files and so on, and then you don't know what to do with it, or you need to spend an equal amount of effort to like find the thing that you're interested about, I just sent you a bunch of noise. So this is again something that's very core to our, let's say, mission of unlocking that data layer, is like, okay, making sure that our users and our clients can actually leverage it in a productive way.
And that's that's something really hard to do. Actually, it sounds. I think you brought a great point of data lakes. Like just for the sake of data lakes, it doesn't make any sense. Like we had one client that I cannot say the name, of course, but it was an owner, and we had to create data lake between Procore and all the Revit models, and at that point I was like, maybe it's too much data, guys. And they were like, no, just put everything there. We know how to use it. And then they made me interview all the different areas of the company because they wanted to create charts out of the data. So at the time I was like, oh, it makes sense. You want to create charts. But then each area wanted more than 30 to 40 charts. So in the end, we ended up creating I think it was like 200 charts. And I was like, guys, are you sure you're going to use all this? It's like, yeah, people are asking for it, so they're going to use it. So we created the 200 charts, and then they ended up using just, I don't know, 10, 12 charts of the whole list. So even when people think that they're going to need it and use it, in the end,
it's
that's not the case. Like you day to day, you need really specific data. Like you don't have even the time to be looking at, I don't know, 30, 40 charts every day. You don't have the time. That's the reality.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I agree.
it's a very sharp. Yeah, I had similar experience. Like in a sense, like yes, create all the design options you want. Like yes, we need, like oh wow, and then we need to measure them on 20 parameters to see how they perform and so on. It's like, are you really sure? Like, isn't this just maybe in that case? This is what I was thinking internally. This is laziness on our end. Like we're too lazy to essentially constrain the design to something meaningful, or trying to understand, what the client at the time best actually wanted, and then essentially deliver, 3, 4 valid options to them, right? And then help them navigate that design space through those archetypes. But charts and data, man, they have sometimes a hypnotic effect on people, which the more the better.
Give me more. Give
Yeah.
me more.
More. And it's the same goes, like, I don't know if you ever committed this sin of CFD analysis of any sorts. Like we have like a running joke was like, CFD at one point is just colors for designers, because like, yeah. There you go. We might get some hate for me saying this, but
No, but it's the truth. It's like, to a certain extent, every simulation, every analysis makes sense, but there's a thin line between that and just over analyzing.
correct. Yeah.
Because you just wasted your time. Like, and unless maybe I think this might change in the future, where I think AI might play a good role, where we don't have the time, we don't have the capacity, but AI might be able to just analyze it internally and do thousands of analysis in a second, and then give you 2-3 viable options. Sure. But it's a computer doing it in a couple of seconds, and not wasting any time and taking into conclusions that our minds are limited, as human beings are limited. But that's different. And I don't know, I think we're still a couple of years until that happens, because AI is still not really good at analyzing topological 3D information.
Yes.
It's not good. It's just frustrating. I don't know if you get your masters of data at Speckle, but I don't know if you get the same feeling.
I have a very similar feeling. I echo what you said a lot. Like I feel frustrated whenever I go to industry events or I listen to other podcasts and so on, and then like you're looking for that one AI use case that would really, like hit it out of the park with AEC, and everything I see is just like mostly centered around image generation and essentially like, sparking that original creativity from the start, which is great, but I can't help feeling that it's maybe like kind of a superficial application of what AI could do, or like what AI could be shaped to do. And yeah, it's correct. Like, I've seen recent examples like Trellis that, they can output meshes. So like, okay, AI is slowly starting to understand what a closed mesh looks like, like but those, it's early days, because those things are even now, I think, from my tests, even unusable for like computer games to a certain extent. They're very raw still as an output. And then I also believe like there's a secondary question which I always have in my mind, which is like, labor has always been a rather cheap in architecture, engineering, and construction. So actually using quote unquote interns to generate everything might still be more cost effective than burning through a couple of NVIDIA GPUs. But I don't know. That's maybe the status today. It might not be the status in a year's time. Let's see.
Yeah, hopefully. No, I yeah, completely agree what you just said. It's true. Like we're getting meshes of simple objects, and they look good, but going from simple meshes into complex objects, and there into topological objects that need to have relationships between them.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's exponentially more complex to develop, and eventually we're gonna get there. The question is how soon is gonna happen, and but my gut feeling is just gonna take a couple of years, because if you even see image generations, it took them a couple of years to go from
Correct.
decent images that is just 2D, and even they are not understanding the relationship between, it's just pixels, right? And it's just logic on a 2D place. And so I think it's gonna take a couple of years, but hey, the soon it happens, the better, right? We're gonna not have to work anymore.
Yes, correct. I mean, a lot of like some of our clients, some of our more advanced clients, this is where like we sometimes get this question, like when will Speckle do AI and so on? And we're like saying, we're not, what we're gonna do, we're gonna help you do AI, right? Because I think to train AI on this, like you need that clean data, you need that valuable data that's kind of unique to each company and unique to each project to a certain extent. And this is our stance, is like, we're providing essentially like picks and shovels to the gold race that AI actually is. So there's a bunch of our clients who are like now attempting to train LLMs and so on. I'm not in the mastery of the technicalities of, but like they're training essentially models to run on their specific data so they can start answering questions and leveraging those for essentially answering questions around data and predicting project cost and so on. These are things that we're seeing, and we're excited to essentially be the foundation for that. We have yet to see like, okay, now this is going to be like a use case that will take over the world when it comes to construction. That has yet to come on our radar.
No, absolutely, and I like the way you're handling it, because just saying I need AI, that doesn't make any sense. Like I'm saying, no. I need a hammer. Yep, but what do you want the hammer for?
Yes. For what?
Yeah, and if you can leverage people, it's like the same way you're leveraging people to create their own tools, like stuff on top of Speckle. I think is the same with AI. Like, hey, if you want to analyze your data because you have a specific use, sure, you can put the data in Speckle, and then you can leverage anything on top of it. And I think it makes more sense, at least for now. That's the only way to go, because like you're the master of your own data, and you're the one who's going to know if you need to fix it or what data to export, and it makes sense.
Yeah, correct. And from all these points of view, like step 0 is like own your data and have your data. If your data is inside the Revit file, it's like kind of a bit, good luck and go forward. How do you take it out? That's kind of where we're positioning ourselves a bit. Yeah.
Cool. I think I don't want to take a little bit more. No more. Oh, I'm gonna do that all. You see, told you. In the end, it happened to me.
Yeah.
Happened to me.
It's okay.
So I know you're a busy person, so I don't want to take a lot more of your time, Dimitri. But before we wrap this up, can I ask you a couple of pimple questions?
Okay, let's see. I may or may not answer. Go ahead.
Okay, like the Schrodinger's cat is like you just said at the same time. can you tell me a great AC software besides Speckle?
A great AEC software besides Speckle. I'm gonna go full controversial. SketchUp, and not because it rhymes with Speckle, but because I literally, when I witness people modeling in SketchUp, like the true SketchUp masters, they've reached this level of enlightenment where they can translate their concept, their idea from their mind into what's happening on their screen with very little friction. And this is what I admire a lot about SketchUp, that it enables essentially this kind of like concept to 3D model with very little friction. But I deliberately chose a controversial answer. You know, I love Rhino. I suck at SketchUp, so don't get me wrong. But give me Rhino and Grasshopper, and I'm your man.
So it's a great tool. So it's not that controversial. You're good. You're good. And the next one is, what do you think is the next big trend in the AC?
Ha. Okay. Well, we've unpacked AI, and we were both a bit suspicious about it. I think really the next big trend in AEC is unlocking that data. Really, I think if we cannot progress, or the industry cannot progress, unless it makes that step change from essentially proprietary blobs of files to essentially analytical data that is queryable, accessible to AIs and for training AIs on, and essentially like improving things. What would also be really great for the industry is a bit less confrontational, let's say, collaboration. So I think this is something that I deeply regret from my professional life, and also like from how things are handled now. It's not about the conversation, it's all about the RFIs, and I'm going to reply to your RFI like 2 weeks later and so on. And nobody really, people stop caring about making an amazing building or designing a good building or delivering it on time. And it's all a bit of a bureaucratic game. Getting rid of that, I think that would also be amazing for the AC industry.
Yeah, maybe like, I don't know, IPD. I don't know if you're familiar with it and the way
that. I think I've heard about it, but I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's just in simplicity, it's just contracts instead of being, being the owner and then hiring the sub. It's like everybody gets a piece of a cake. So if we win, we all win. If we lose, we all lose. So that way, everybody's interested on not change orders or anything like that, but instead of like doing it as fast and as cheap as possible, or as in budget. Let's put it like that.
Okay. Yeah, amazing. Yes, I that resonates a lot with me. Yes.
Oh. And last but not least, what's your favorite building in the world, and have you ever visited?
My favorite building in the world, and have I ever visited it? Yes, I have. I'm lucky enough to live in London, where there's a bunch of famous, nice buildings. I mean, it might be a cliche.
Don't say
I'm wondering if I.
Please don't say.
No, no, not the walkie-talkie, though. That's actually fun. Okay, in a weird way. I actually really enjoyed the British Museum. Actually, it's more for. It is a bit of a cliche, right? But it is, with early example covering of the parametric covering that Foster's did, if I'm not mistaken, and like basically all the history that's encapsulated inside. For me, it's like a very nice example of where like early, let's call it parametric design, if you may, actually won and like delivered an amazing addition to amazing history and worked in tandem with it. Yeah,
good choice.
Okay,
that's a good choice. And well, thanks so much for everything, all the knowledge you have and everything you do for the industry, man. I follow you on GitHub, and you're one of the few founders that I see that keep sending PRs into the code, and you do it really often. So
I need to stay true. No.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's not easy to do. So I appreciate all the things you do for the industry and being open source. It's a great thing. So before we say goodbye to each other, can you tell everybody where they can know more about Speckle or contact you as well?
This is the sales pitch for sure. Yes. So you can find out more about Speckle on our website, speckle.systems. You can sign up and get going with it straight off the bat. We also have an amazing community forum at speckle.community, which is an actual web address. That's like where mostly the hackers gather, the people building stuff on top of Speckle. And we also maintain an active presence there. I think those are two of the great places to start when you're looking for Speckle. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I think a simple search will reveal me, hopefully. And that's it. I think, Valentin, thank you for having me and having a very good conversation today. Like, I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much. It was really fun, and I hope I hear more about Speckle in the future. All right?
Oh, you will. Trust me, you will.
I can't.
We'll make sure of that. Yes.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks to you. Bye-bye.
Thanks to our listeners. If you like this content, you can find past and upcoming episodes in ascworks.everse.com and at all of our Everse social media. We'd love to hear from you and recommendations for new content, so leave us a DM and we'll make sure to catch it.